All right, let's turn this bulb off. What? Huh? A friend of mine called Mark Warner showed me the really strange behavior of some bulbs that he'd bought. They're not your typical screw-in Edison type bulb, but they are fairly common. What's strange about these bulbs is you can't turn them off. Like, he's in his house and he flicks the switch and it stays on. You see it's still glowing? My first feeling was that, oh well, there's just a capacitor in there or something, and you know, if you give it time, it'll eventually discharge and just, you know, it'll stop. Or maybe it's, no, that's not what's happening. This will glow indefinitely. How can that be? Well, obviously I've managed to recreate the effect here in the lab, so I thought I'd run you through what's happening, like what's happening between this wire and this wire, and why you might find that kind of scenario in someone's house. Step one, direct connection, turns on, loses the connection, turns off again, there's no glow. So here's what that looks like as a circuit diagram. You've got this red wire coming out from live, it's going through the bulb into the black wire which goes to neutral. Very straightforward. I can make it all a bit safer by adding a fitting for the bulb and using these terminal block thingies. Look, there you go, the same thing happens. And if I unplug it, it goes off completely. Now, just for fun, let's add loads and loads of wires. This is 50 meters of wire, and I'm just going to add it to the circuit. I'm not going to change anything about it, I'm just going to make the wiring longer. Okay, so let's follow the wiring. The live wire comes out of here, goes round and 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 round till it comes out the other end. Right, it comes around here. It's stupid. It goes straight back into there. Now it's the black wire. It's going round and round and round and round and round and round and round. Comes all the way back, and now it's out here. It goes through the bulb and then out through this black wire and back to neutral. Remember, I haven't changed the circuit diagram at all. I've just added loads and loads of wire to it that loops back on itself. And it just so happens that the loop of wire is kind of housed in this single casing. Predictably, the bulb turns on, there it is, and when we unplug it, it turns off. The thing hasn't happened yet. The next step is to break the circuit at this point. By the way, this is very, very dangerous. Do not do this. Don't do this. Just don't do it, it's very dangerous. We can just check that again. So, red wire comes out of here, round and round and round and round and round and round, stops. There's a gap, black wire, round and round and round and round, comes out here, goes to the bulb, goes to the neutral wire, the black one comes back to the plug. Plug it in, and there it is, there's that glow. Look at that, but the circuit's broken. So how is it doing it? Well, actually, this is the type of wiring you end up with when you want to add a switch to your bulbs. So I've wired in a wall switch, and all this cabling here, you can imagine that being in the walls and the ceiling of your house, connecting the light switch to the light. And of course, when you turn it off, it breaks the circuit, but in this case, the bulb stays on. But the question is, why? Well, it turns out that all this cabling here is acting like a capacitor. This capacitor isn't just storing charge from when the bulb was turned on and then slowly releasing it once it's turned off. It's actually enabling the bulb to stay on permanently, drawing power from the mains and costing you money. A capacitor is just a component in a circuit that you can push charge into by applying a voltage. It can store charge, and it typically looks a little bit like that. How can a coil of wire act like a capacitor? Because when you think about electricity flowing through a wire, you're thinking about the flow of electrons, right? And it's a bit like water flowing through a pipe. That's a useful metaphor. And when you apply a voltage to the end of a wire, it's pushing on the electrons. It's a bit like when you've got water in a pipe like this. You can push on the electrons at one end and electrons will pop out at the other end like that, right? So long as the wire is connected to something. But when the wire's not connected to something like this, when the circuit's broken, it's a bit like me holding my finger over the end of this syringe. It doesn't matter how hard I press, it doesn't matter what voltage I apply, I can't get the water to move because water is essentially incompressible. And actually that's where this metaphor breaks down. A better analogy in this scenario would be gas flowing through pipes. So look, I can stop the end with my finger, which is like this end has been stopped here. I can still compress the gas because gas is compressible. And so when I plug this thing in, the voltage here at the live wire, this red wire, is pushing electrons into the wire. It's increasing the density of electrons. And now the electrons outnumber the metal ions. So there's a net negative charge built up inside this red wire all the way through this coil. And you probably know this already, electrons repel each other because like charges repel. So all the electrons inside this black wire that's sat next to the red wire all the way through this coil are being repelled by the negative charge inside this red wire. So to summarize, the voltage here pushes electrons into the red wire. You've got a buildup of negative charge. That negative charge repels the electrons in the black wire. They're pushed out of the wire, eventually out of here, through the bulb, which lights up into the neutral wire and then into the neutral line of the mains. Now, if Edison had won, this wouldn't work. If we were all using a DC power supply for our homes, direct current, this wouldn't happen. Because think about it, if you've got a permanent positive voltage here, it will push electrons into the wire and the electrons will build up in density until the repulsion of those electrons matches the voltage and you reach equilibrium. No more current flows. But Edison didn't win, Tesla won, and we all have AC power supplies in our homes, alternating current. So the voltage here at the live wire is going up and down, positive, negative, positive, negative. It's pushing the electrons in and then pulling them back out again repeatedly. In the UK, 50 times a second, in the US, 60 times a second. And that's how you can have a permanently glowing bulb, even when it's switched off. So here's what the diagram really looks like. That big coil of wire is actually a capacitor. And I've only just thought about this. The symbol for a capacitor is really appropriate because it's a break in the circuit. This is an accidental capacitor, but it's the same working principle in deliberate capacitors, except that instead of having two wires, you have two metal sheets, maybe made of aluminium. Interesting. So basically like aluminium foil, and they're separated not by this rubber, but by maybe wax paper. And then the whole assembly is rolled up into a cylinder, which is how you get the classic shape of a capacitor. One thing that I really don't understand is why this only seems to work with these cheap LED bulbs from China and not the bog standard LED bulbs that you might buy from a supermarket or a hardware store. I've taken this one apart and the LED bit looks really similar, but look, there's a lot more going on with these components than there is in this one. So all this stuff somehow prevents the glow, maybe deliberately, maybe by accident. I'm not really qualified to figure that out, but don't worry, I know someone who is. So to get the answer to this final part of the mystery, you need to head over to a YouTube channel called ElectroBOOM. If you haven't heard of ElectroBOOM already, it's amazing. You should subscribe to that channel. But anyway, for now, I'll leave a link to the companion video over on his channel where he explains the difference between those things. I'll put it in the card there, up there in the corner. I'll also put a link in the description and on the end screen as well. But for now, that is the story of the capacitor hidden inside the walls of your home. I've got a big update about my regular sponsor, Brilliant.org. Their offline courses functionality is now available on Android as well as iPhone. Look, Android is superior to iPhone. That's not contentious, but one issue with Android was always that you couldn't use Brilliant.org's offline courses functionality on that platform, but now you can. I use the London Underground a lot, so it's a big deal for me. I've been working through the Computer Sciences Essentials course, which is super interactive, really fun, and the ability to do that without signal or Wi-Fi down on the tube is great. If you're not sure what course you want to dive into, you should check out the daily challenges. They're quick and really fun, and every challenge has a full-blown course attached to it if you want to dig a bit deeper. A subscription gives you access to the full archive of daily challenges and to every single course. So why not check it out today? Go to brilliant.org/Steve Mould. The link's also in the description there, and the first 200 people to use that link will get 20% off annual membership. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.